All right, testing 1, 2, 3. All right, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is going to probably start being around the setup of my final setup here for my podcast here. I went ahead and I changed my video camera. I went from an APS-C camera to a full frame. And I do photography as a hobby, so I had one laying around, so I figured I'd go ahead and use it. Plus it had headphone injects and audio monitoring, so I can actually see my levels this time here. So I got rid of my Monocaster, and I went with this full-fledged podcaster from Rode here. And we're going to give it a go and see how it works. So I have my microphone volume all the way up. I have the main volume one line shy of being maxed out. I have a lot of the filters on. And we're going to give this a go. I have the music playing in the background at about midway. So I guess it's called level, or whatever you want to say. But it's midway. We're going to give this a test and we're going to see how it goes. All right. I think today, we're going to talk a little bit about, Star Wars and my history with Star Wars. Well, when the first Star Wars came out in 1977, I wasn't born yet. So I didn't get to see Star Wars until later on the VHS run when I was a little kid. I was probably about 8 years old. Now, I remember one of my first memories. We were going to the drive-thru, and I remember the return. The Empire Strikes Back. And I was probably about 2 years old, and I had no idea of what was going on in this movie. But one of the scenes that stuck out to me was the Walker scene on Hoth. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, that's awesome. It's like I have no idea what's going on, but that scene just looked really cool to me for some reason. And it's one of my first memories that I remember, going to the movies and see. We had this we were living in Cross City at the time, and there was this drive-in movie theater that wasn't too far from the Georgia Pacific plant down there. And I remember my mom putting this little microphone in the car, and it just sounded terrible. You had nothing to really base it off of, but I just know that didn't sound good, and I didn't like the way it sounded. But it is what it is. Then Return of the Jedi came out, and I remember going to the drive-in and seeing that as well, and still wondering, like, oh my God, this is stupidly boring. And I have no idea still what's going on. But, since I was a 70s baby, grew up in the 80s and came of age in the 90s, the Super Nintendo came out. And they had Super Star Wars on the Super NES. And I remember playing this, and I was still thinking, it's like, I still have no idea what the fuck is going on. So for me, I really didn't get into Star Wars, and it was a very loose getting into Star Wars until 1999 with the prequels trilogies, The Phantom Menace. And I remember we were overseas. We were in Tazar, Hungary, and we were one of the first ones who first got to see the movie. And I remember it's like the visuals, the movie theater that we were in, it was subpar, but the visual settings were pretty good. And then I remember once the splash screen came on and then the music started playing, it was just like we were just listening to it in two headphone buds. It was so flat. But I remember watching the movie and thinking to myself, like, this is okay. I mean, of course, we all have our thoughts on Jar Jar Binks at the time. And I still think, oh my God, it's like that is a stupidly character of, let's just keep it a buck here. Black people here, what they had on it. And I was just like, why would they do that? And I get it. You know, there's always the character that has to appeal toward the kids. And, you know, it is what it is, but it didn't make me the biggest Star Wars fan. But I remember a few of the things they were talking about, was like the Sith are returning. And it was just like, wow, who are the Sith? And why should I care that they're returning? You know, but, you know, a couple years passed by. Then the Attack of the Clones came out. And then, you know, Anakin grew up a little bit. And I remember thinking to myself, it's like, wow, he went from a cute kid to just a whiny little, basically. And I remember in the movie theater thinking to myself, it's like, the movie's okay. You know, what people really, you know, really cheered about was that last scene when Count Dooku and Yoda fought each other. And it was just like, wow, that was awesome. 2 hours of a movie for really the last 10 minutes to really just make it kind of worthwhile, because it's like, wow, that was a great fight scene. And then a couple months later, they had that Cartoon Network show. And it was just like, that was pretty cool. It's like it had that Samurai Jack feel. I think the same guy who did Samurai Jack did the Star Wars cartoon show, the original one. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And then when I moved from South Carolina to Washington, I think it was like I moved up here in 2004. And then around 2005, because it was about my first year, the Revenge of the Sith came out. And then I remember watching this and thinking to myself, it's like, wow, this is the first Star Wars movie that I really, really like. I thought it was so awesome to see how Anakin progressed and he finally fell to the dark side. You know, I thought that there was a lot missing out of it, and there was a lot missing out of it, you know. After reading the book and everything now, it's just like, my God, it's like, how do you make a almost 11-hour book into a 2.5 hour long movie? And you have to cut a lot out, and that they did. And they did it in droves, now knowing about it second pass. But that was my first Star Wars special that I really enjoyed. And then the Cartoon Network show came out, the Clone Wars, and it had that flashback 30s vibe when they did the infomercials talking about what's going on and the recap of what happened. I was just like, this is awesome. I remember thinking to myself, it's like, you know, here we go with the kid thing again when they put Ahsoka out there. But little did we know, Ahsoka became a fan favorite of everybody, and now look at her, everybody just loves Ahsoka. But that right there, that Clone Wars, is kind of what cemented me into really, really liking Star Wars. And you know, here we are now, and I'm gonna say something that's pretty much a hot take on this right here, and I still stand by it. You know, I'm probably gonna get flamed in the comments or whatever, but this is just my truth. You know, here we are now. I watch Star Wars with my daughter. We watch everything from the Clone Wars to Young Jedis, Rebels, and everything else. But I, to this day, really still have no attachment. I feel no attachment to the original series. And I know in the Star Wars fandom that those words could be blasphemous. But again, that's just my honest opinion, how I feel about it. But even now, with Disney buying, you know, Lucasfilm and them taking over Star Wars, you know, the sequel trilogy, you know, The Force Awakens, I forget the second one, and then hell, let's just keep it a buck, I don't even care to remember the third one of the trilogy, of the new sequel trilogy. And I think Disney has done a big disservice to Star Wars on the big screen. But a lot of the small screen stuff, I think it's working pretty well. You know, even the new Acolyte that came out right now, you know, I try not to read comments when it comes to Star Wars, because let's just be honest here, the Star Wars fandom can be very toxic. But I think overall, again, here's a hot take compared to everybody else. And yes, we know it has, cues or things on there that I personally don't agree with, but it is what it is. I think it was a good show. There's a few things here and there. Yeah, I guess you can say they're redoing the way the Force is. But I think it works. It's a pretty decent story because, let's just keep it a buck here. We've been doing everything in the old, not the old Republic, the prequels and everything between. I think it's fair to go, prior to the series and do stories within there. Sometimes they don't have to be about the main protagonist of Star Wars that we know and love. It's good to always get second stories. It's like if you're going to make a universe that big, you can always expand on the other stories that's to be told in there. Like for me, one of my favorite Star Wars novels is Plagueis. And I can't wait for them to do a Plagueis show or novel or anything movie. I'm sorry, novel, because the novel's already been done. That's one of the novels to actually, another kind of nerdy thing here. I listen to it in Plagueis at least once a month on the job in my headphones. It's just that good of a book. I completely love it, and I never tire of it. If you haven't read Plagueis, I think you should give it a go. It's a really good read, and if you don't read the book, Audible is your best friend. But I think we can do stories in there, and it works out good. Even again, like I said, with Young Jedi, after the whole Rebels fiasco, and I kind of got mad when Rebels came out because I'm like, man, how are you going to cancel the Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, bring Star Wars to Disney, and make a kiddie show? Yeah, the joke was on me because I should have watched that show way prior to it because I missed so much, the whole Thrawn and everything else. I had no idea that happened. And then I think right when Mandalorian came out and some other things, I was like, what happened? And it's like, you didn't see Rebels? Well, no, I didn't want to watch Rebels because they canceled Clone Wars. And it's like, well, you might want to go back and check out the Rebels and catch up and see what happened. I was like, God damn it. So went back, binge watched Rebels, and it was like, that's not horribly bad. I kind of like it. But that still didn't beat the Clone Wars. So that's my little take on Star Wars here, as I'm still sitting up here now, playing with this new microphone, keyboard setup, and everything else. If there's anything that I could do right now, like I say, this is a test video, and I want to see how everything comes out. Everything seems to be working fine on my end here. Tell me what you think about the sound, the lighting, and everything else, and what I can and can't do better. And as always, Jones out. Have a good night.